Hi everybody, welcome back to more Whole Wellness with Anne. This is video number 5 in a series I'm doing on abuse. What is it? Let's talk about it. So thank you so much for joining me. Videos 1 through 4 went into a bit of an intro and the motivators. I had 4 primary motivators for doing this series. And the last one, the 4th motivator we talked about in video number 4, really touched on the fact that every person has personal autonomy and self-government, and victims often are convinced otherwise by their abusers. And we talked about red flags and what to watch for. And now we're going to get into more of the discussion. Now that we've talked about what abuse is and the reasons why I was motivated to do this series, we're going to talk more about my personal experience with abuse and how it's relevant, and hopefully it will be of use to you and help to you in understanding or putting your own experience in perspective, and hopefully helping you to put that first step forward or to continue what you've already started on your path of healing and wellness. So this is what I've been working on for the past 2 years with the help of my trusted counselor. I'm finally learning what healthy boundaries and healthy relationships look like. I've been working on trying to figure out how to maintain healthy relationships, how to maintain healthy boundaries. It's a work in progress. I still admit to not fully comprehending how to operate in a healthy relationship. It is very difficult for someone like me, and probably, I imagine that if you're a victim of abuse, you can relate to this. It is still very hard for me to figure out what a healthy relationship is and what a healthy relationship is not. What I have done recently in order to protect myself and focus on healing is I've closed a lot of doors on non-intimate acquaintances that really don't bring me any joy, or they are too reminiscent of the hurt that I've experienced in the past. Particularly on social media, I've sought distance from, and I may have already told you this in a prior video, but just by way of an example, on Facebook, I was friends with all of the people, like I'd say probably 50% of the people that I used to work with at that job from 2014 to 2019, that triggering experience, work experience, I used to be friends with on Facebook. And as we all know about social media, we can talk till we're blue in the face about our opinions on social media, but I had to unfriend all of them. Whether I liked them or not, whether they were good for me or not, I had to get away from all of it, all of them, because that workplace was so toxic and so fraudulent that it seeped into every corner of everything they did. And so me continuing to see all of the things that they were up to and the relationships that they had that were so fake and so fraudulent and so toxic, I couldn't have that in front of me anymore. I needed to get away from it all in order to heal. And so over the last 2 years, I've put up a lot of distance between me and either people who I know to be toxic or people that are reminiscent of toxic relationships I've had, in order to get away from it, in order to heal. And I'm very, very, very slowly reintroducing some people and some relationships in my life, i.e. my mom, who I had gotten great distance from and sought great distance from, because she is a person that has hurt me so much in my life. It's unbelievable how much my mother has hurt me. She loves me. Don't get me wrong. I do know that. She has no clue, no awareness whatsoever, the extent of the harm that she has done to me and the rest of my siblings. because she's an injured person herself. She has trauma from her own childhood. And I am very sorry that if you're hearing a clicking and noise in the background of this video, I just realized that I'm making a bunch of racket by fidgeting with Legos. So I'm sorry about that. By now you all know what a goofball I am. I'm just a lighthearted person for the most part and like to laugh, and so I do goofy things like that, and my videos sometimes are interspersed with such nonsense. Pardon me while I take a sip of my hot tea. Anyway, as I mentioned in video 1, over the last couple of weeks, my family has been dealing with COVID. I'm just coming out on the other side of it. So I still kind of have a dry throat. I'm still drinking hot tea. And so pardon me if every once in a while you see a pause in the video. It's just so I can drink some tea and get some moisture in my throat because I still have a cough and I feel fine. It's just, that's one of the reasons that I may sound funny or do, pause the video or have weird things happen in my videos. Getting back to it, being that I have sought some distance between my mom and also others in an effort to help me heal at the same time from this work experience I had, I needed to do that to heal. And I've just started reintroducing, and it's still an exploration, and still, that's why I'm always talking about I'm still on my journey of healing, because I just think that it's going to take some time. My counselor has been very instrumental in teaching and guiding me that about what healthy measures are, what healthy behaviors are, what I have learned. My counselor has taught me what I need to know, what the tools are to put into practice to maintain healthy relationships and healthy boundaries with people, but I still need to practice it. I still need to put it into practice in real life. They're just concepts in my head and in my heart right now. I need to actually work on and practice fostering healthy relationships and maintaining arm's length from those that may not be so healthy for me to have in my life. So that's what I've been working on for the last 2 years with my counselor. And I am finally learning about what it looks like to be in a healthy relationship and what it looks like to have healthy boundaries. And again, please remember that when I say healthy relationship, I'm not speaking exclusively of and about romantic relationships. I'm talking about any relationship. Parent-child, coworker, boss, sibling, aunt, cousin, grandparent, whatever the relationship is. I am talking about any and all relationships. As I've been on this journey, I have discovered that when I was young, and as I've self-reflected and went back in time and went over my childhood and read my journals and reminisced and self-reflected, I discovered that when I was young, I was in tune with my senses and I did know the red flags. I was born an empath. I was born with a sixth sense. I was born being able to pick up on vibes from people. And I discovered that when I was young, I did try numerous times to say no, to say stop, to say this is not okay with me, and to say enough is enough. I knew my own boundaries as a child, as you may have known your boundaries as a child, as you may have known your boundaries as a teenager, as you may have known your boundaries as a young adult or a full-grown adult in relationships. But sometimes abusers or people in superior positions where we're vulnerable, they don't allow you to have boundaries, or they make you believe that you are not allowed to have boundaries. And so you can't foster them. You're a prisoner in the relationship. Pardon me. Yes, I haven't let that cool too much, so it's very, very hot still, but it is very good tea. So I'm sure many of you can relate to this. Unfortunately for me, in childhood is far too often the case for so many victims. My pleas about having healthy boundaries fell on deaf ears. And over the course of the last 2 years, I've learned that because of my maltreatment during my youth, I became an adult with a wealth of mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical struggles. Remember, we touched on that in video number 2, I think it was, when we talked about the correlation between abuse and adult or childhood onset mental struggles and conditions. I grew up to be an adult who, just like my siblings, my parents, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents, passed on my own trauma to others. At least I started to, and thank God I stopped. I learned that as an adult, with the support and encouragement of other healthy people, particularly my counselor, who I cannot thank enough for his wisdom, his insight, his care, I 100% have the ability and authority to decide now whether to say, no, stop, this is not okay, enough is enough. Now, I know that. I have complete autonomy, as do you. And what's more is that when I say no to someone, they have a choice too. They have a choice too. Not only do I have a choice, but others have a choice. Others that I'm in a relationship with. Others have autonomy as well, and self-government. Every single person does. And that person who I say no to can opt to continue to treat me badly, or they can stop treating me badly, as does your abuser. They have a choice. Once I make my decision about my own personal boundary and communicate stop to them, is the moment that they then have the responsibility to decide for themselves whether our relationship comes first or whether their freedom to behave however they see fit comes first. They have to then decide whether their own behavior is acceptable to them or not. Once I communicate that their behavior is unacceptable to me or for me, then they have to decide. And if they decide that their behavior is acceptable, that's the moment that they've decided that the relationship, whatever kind of relationship it is not worth whatever value it might have had. If they are unable to accept the boundary that I've laid forth, that this behavior is unacceptable to me and it cannot continue, that person then makes their decision. And we have to relieve ourselves of the responsibility and pass it off to them, put the ball right back in their court and say, hey, this is okay, this is not okay with me. Now you need to decide if it's not okay with you as well. If you accept this boundary that I'm putting forth, that it's not okay with me, then they need to then say, well, I think it's okay, or you're right, it's not okay for me to say or do those things to you. And the moment they decide that their behavior is perfectly okay and that we're overreacting or we're being too sensitive, then they basically are saying that they've determined their behavior is okay for them, which then we have to accept, okay, that's okay for you, you need to move on. You're not going to be a person intimate with me because I've already laid this boundary down and clearly it's not important enough to you. It's as simple as that. That is the moment that they decide that their job, their friends, their authority, their opinion, their control, their reputation, whatever it is worth more than their relationship with me. And that's where it gets so hard for victims, because what happens is we do not recognize our value and worth for what it is. The gold, diamond, platinum nugget that we are, each of us, the abusers have convinced us otherwise. But they're lies. They're lying. And that's why we find it so hard. They determine that their whatevers, friends, control, reputation, whatever, are more important, and that we're not as important. And what we need to do is say, no, I'm platinum, I'm diamond, I'm gold. I'm worth more than what you're treating me. I'm worth more than this relationship where I've said, hey, you're hurting me because of this, this, and this. And you're deciding that I'm being too insensitive. Someone else doesn't get to decide whether you should or shouldn't be hurt. Each person decides that for themselves. And if you communicate, that's not okay with me, you're hurting me, then they don't get to decide that they're not. Their decision is whether or not they think it's acceptable for themselves. And if they're, bless their hearts, able to decide that they did make a mistake and it's not acceptable for them and they need to get help, wonderful. But if they say, there's nothing wrong with my behavior, I'm perfectly fine, that's the moment where you say, you made your choice. You made your choice, not me. I expressed to you what my boundary was. You refused to respect it. So you made your choice. And that's where the healthy boundary lays down. They make their own choice. Once you make your choice, you communicate, hey, this is not acceptable, and you tell them, and they make their choice. Excuse me again for one moment. Honestly, this tea is so good. It's, you know, I love hot tea. I don't drink it enough. I just love it so much. This is Yogi brand, and it's like sweet tangerine, I think is what it's called. Oh, it is so good. So once the abuser has made their decision, then that's the exact same moment where I have to simply accept that they've made their decision. I've made my decision about what I'm not willing to tolerate. I've communicated it. They've made their decision. I need to just accept their decision. It's not a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth tennis match argument. It is a matter of me accepting that they've made their decision about what I've communicated. Every person has personal autonomy, remember? And that person has made the choice in favor of poor behavior. We just don't see eye to eye on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable behavior. And we need to accept that about them, that they've made their decision. And that's when we get our power and control and go from there. That's what a healthy boundary looks like. What do we need to do in order to maintain healthy boundaries? We don't want to get to a position where we have to make extreme decisions like some people, and I'm sorry if you're dealing with this, where you might be a minor and the responsibility of your parents, where you're in a situation where or you're in a marriage where you don't have anywhere to go and you don't have any choices. You have very limited decisions about how you can get away from your abuser. I really recommend talking to someone and getting help from a professional or legal resource in your area to get help. At the very least, talk to a trusted friend, have a confidant, keep a journal hidden. Trust yourself and make sure that you don't do anything drastic. Make sure you're well thought through and you protect yourself and protect your loved ones at all costs in terms of if you're in a dangerous situation. We're talking about healthy boundaries as a general rule. This is why an individual's moral compass plays such a vital role in healthy boundaries and healthy relationships, because it's a discussion about what each one of us values above and beyond anything else. You know, what's going to take priority. For me, in my situation, it wasn't hard. It really wasn't. Though I deeply love and value my parents and siblings, I really do. I value truth more than any label or family connection or obligation or history. Truth is very important to me. And it was painful for me. As I've said, it was not easy. It's been very much a roller coaster, emotional roller coaster for me. But I already knew what I valued, and I didn't struggle in any way, shape, or form with my values in any way. As I was going through therapy and weighing what my boundaries were going to be, that was not a struggle for me, I will admit. What I did struggle with, which was surprising to me, was defining what I will not tolerate. I knew what my values were. I knew what my morals were. I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know what I would not tolerate and at what point that I would draw that line and what my values will not be. That was a bit more of a struggle for me to identify. And that's probably because many of the things that I have never tolerated are the very things that I was taught to value growing up. That's the sad reality. I think that's the struggle that I had, is that I was raised in a family where things that I detest were very much valued. And I've never thought about that before. Things like image or social status or material possessions or power or authority. I've never, ever in my entire life cared one iota about any of that stuff. And those were things that were very much a part of my upbringing as important, as goals, as lifetime achievements, as, things that made you successful and made you happy and made you a good person. I never valued connections, titles, money, anything like that. But I know what I do value is my soul, and I value truth and honesty. I value my integrity and my kindness. I value justice and fairness. I value respect for the individual. I value peace and joy and gratitude. These are the things that are my mantra. So that is where we'll end video number 5, is just wanting to recap my personal relationship with abuse and trauma and what I've been working on the last couple of years. And we talked about the personal autonomy and personal self-governance and what happens when we put down a healthy boundary and someone then has their personal autonomy and makes their decision, and then that we have to accept their decision. That's what I've been working on. That's what I've been working on for the last 2 years, especially through therapy, is just, what do I value? What are my healthy boundaries? And what I don't value? Very similarly, what don't I value? What are not priorities for me? So in this video, that's what we're talking about, is the values and the moral compass that I had to work on, that each of us needs to work on. As we need to know our morals and our values so that we're able to identify what we're willing to put up with or compromise on, and what we're absolutely not willing to compromise on, and where the line gets drawn in the sand of what's unacceptable behavior for us, for each and every one of us. And we need to communicate that clearly with perpetrators, potential perpetrators of abuse in our lives in any given relationship. Thank you so much for joining me on this video number 5 in this series and discussion on abuse. Stay tuned, please, for video number 6. There's lots more content to come. We're just discussing abuse and how it relates to our livelihood and getting healthy. As I always say, take care of you. Don't take that lightly. Check out prior content videos if you're wondering what we're talking about. Thank you so much, and join me again for video number 6 and our discussion on abuse. See ya.